short in time. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Polkowski, and it is my great pleasure to welcome you today on the last day of the Single Economic Days organized by European Circular Economy Stakeholder Platform at the San Francisco. And we meet once again in the political community. So firstly, I'd like to start with thanking our guests. The title of our today's meeting is Shifting Gears, Adapting Circular Policies for a Changing World. It's a little bit mysterious, right? So let me just tell you that we will discuss economic incentives. Economic incentives in different aspects. What do they mean? What do we mean by economic incentives? What are the benefits? What are the activities against different types of policy measures that we currently implement? And I'm going to watch a short video clip prepared by the leadership group on economic incentives at the European Circular Economy Stakeholder Platform that will briefly summarize what we mean by economic incentives, what are they better than other forms of policies.
Our planet is facing considerable threats stemming from our unsustainable take-make-waste economic model. What can we do? Switching to a circular economy model can diminish the negative effects of human production and consumption. We can use less resources for longer, not once, but multiple times. However, this is against basic human tendencies. People prefer to consume more, not less goods, especially if it's convenient, and they don't see the immediate negative effects of this overconsumption. Is there a way out? We can rely on people fighting their urges. Changing our tendencies is difficult, but possible. However, it takes literally centuries, a time that we don't have. We can make rules on what people can and can't do. Rules cause frustration. Why can't I do that? Or, why I'm not allowed to do what I want. The system is restricting actions that were previously possible. People perceive it as a loss in their life quality. Or we can persuade people to change their behavior to produce the desired outcomes. These are called incentives and are our best option for a transition to a more sustainable economic system. Incentives can be efficient, take effect relatively fast, without prohibiting specific behaviors. The problem is that economic incentives are currently used not to help positive causes, but to support the negative ones. The basic example being the fossil fuels subsidies that amounted to 7.1% of global GDP in 2022. At the same time, the relatively low significance of green taxation has decreased even further, as in the EU example. It's due time to switch these proportions and use incentives to support sustainability of our economic system. The effectiveness and potential of numerous economic incentives tools is well established. Let's not wait any longer, but put them into a good use and make the circular transition possible.
So this was a short introduction to economic incentives. What are they? But I would like to offer you a more layman approach to what economic incentives are, an analogy to what they are and how they work. So now you can imagine that we overconsume by around 75%. If each consumer in the world consumes like a Japanese person on a whole does, we will need not one planet, but two additional ones. So you might say that we are, in a sense, obese, and we have to slim down because we know that the consequences of this, of being obese globally, are detrimental for the planet and for our future life, the quality of future life. This is a greenhouse crisis, pollution, and biodiversity loss, etc. So we have lots and lots of things to think about and how to manage them because of this overconsumption and overproduction. So what do we do now? We have three policy options that come to mind first. First one is to educate, work on behavior, change mindset. We heard this a lot throughout the 3 days of the circular economy days, right? And I would compare this to, being sort of like having a lot of self-control, right? But who could actually forego this sweet consumption so easily? Well, the ones who try to diet for a little bit, I know for myself, this is not easy. So it's the same with, changing mindset. It just takes a lot of time, a lot of work, and a lot of persistency. So it's not so easy. The second option that we actually used for a few years now, this are regulations, obligations, and regulations that penalize our behavior into a more sustainable way. So one comparison that comes to mind is maybe something more in like bariatric surgery, right? So you have this obligation to actually limit your consumption, and this is it's not easy. You don't want it really, but it works at the end. But the third option that we will discuss today, these are economic incentives, and I think I know where I'm going with this, because the analogy actually that comes to my mind is the new types of drugs that we have now for obesity. They are comparatively easy to use, they are effective, they are timely. So there you have it. We have the answer to the problems that we face nowadays. But the problem is, although we know economic incentives are effective, are timely, and not cause so much burden like other options of policy, we don't use them actually. You've seen on the video clip that we use economic incentives more in the favor of all those unsustainable causes like fossil fuel consumption instead of helping the positive ones. Thus, today we will not discuss if the economic incentives are a good option towards achieving circular economic model in Europe and globally, but we will discuss how to do it. What did we learn from previous mistakes? This session consists of 2 panels. The first one, which I will moderate, will take on how to avoid social pushback to potential economic incentives implementation. And it is called persuasion instead of obligations, avoiding social backlash through sensible legislation. And the second one, moderated by my colleague Agnieszka Sznyk, will take on what went wrong with the current way we use economic incentives. It's called Regulators and Unsustainable Behavior, the Role of Taxation and Economic Subsidies. So now I would like to invite my distinguished guests and panelists. Let's start with you, Claire Downey, CEO of the Discovery Center. I also invite Shunsuke Nanagi-san, distinguished professor and director of Urban Institute at Kyushu University. Matteo Ward, please join us. Matteo Ward, CEO of Inside Out Fashion, and Aina Hota, founder and CEO of Natural State.
Thank you.
Maybe a round of applause for our guests. So yeah, we're trying to discuss economic incentives, but not are they really better with than regulation, obligation, and changing mindset, education, etc. We're here to discuss what actually went wrong, firstly, with the obligations. And Claire, let's start with you. And the first question would be, in your opinion, which policy design or framing mistake resulted in pushback against sustainable policies?
Turn it off first. Thank you very much, and it's great to be here, of course. So at the Rediscovery Centre we do a lot of things, and one of them is we work on research to help inform policy, so that's why we're here. And work a lot on Irish policy in particular, so I'll share some Irish examples and a little bit about Europe as well. What I wanted to frame this around at the beginning is that we shouldn't confuse pushback against measures and obligations with pushback against sustainability in general or circular economy in general, and that we've done some market research in Ireland. We don't have it for Europe, but we have done some for Ireland that shows more than 3/4 of people really do believe circular economy is a good thing, and that government and businesses should prioritise it. So we know there's a lot of goodwill behind this idea. Similarly, on climate change, 80% of people in Ireland are at least somewhat worried about it. So we know also there's a lot of people who are bought into the change is needed. So then it's down to how do you do it, as you said. What is the measure and how does it affect people? So I have 3 examples, one bad, one in the middle, and one good, just to compare all 3. 2 economic and 1 obligation, so you can guess which one is which. Now I'll start with the bad. We recently introduced a deposit return scheme in Ireland. From the outside, it's seen as a positive step, and certainly other countries in the UK, for example, are looking to Ireland to see how did you do that, how did it work so well. But what we know from being in Ireland is that it wasn't such a smooth journey, and also it's having some negative effects. So a deposit return scheme, if you're not familiar with it, is where you pay a little bit extra on, in our case, they're plastic bottles, drinking bottles, and cans, aluminium cans, when you buy them, and then you can bring them to a machine. In our case, you can bring them to a machine and get the money back when you bring it to the machine. So it's either in a voucher form or you can get cash at a till. The industry was consulted when this was being introduced, and retailers were consulted, and there was lots of feedback, but not all of it was taken on board. And in the end, there was a lot of pushback from waste companies, from retailers, and from the public. The public in particular, because what happened is that if you were already recycling cans and bottles and putting them in your bin, in your household recycling bin, you were already doing your part, you were already recycling. When the deposit return scheme was introduced, if you wanted your deposit back, you have to bring it to a machine. And the machines are in supermarkets or car parks, they're not in your bin. So you could no longer I suppose you lose money if you put your can or bottle in the bin, which was a good behaviour before. So the deposit return scheme made it less convenient, especially for people who didn't have cars or have mobility problems, and made it cost more for them. And there was real pushback. We know that politicians, there was an election last year for local politicians, and anyone in the Green Party, unfortunately, was very associated with the introduction of deposit return and wiped out. So that was the direct result of that. Oh, sorry. We also know that while there's been a lot of reduction in litter, that people really aren't claiming back all of the fees, so it means that obviously recycling hasn't changed a huge amount as a result, which would be the ultimate goal. The second one I wanted to talk about is a regulation, in this case the eco-design regulations. there's not a lot of information about these, so but the eco-design regulations that were first introduced 5 years ago, 6 years ago, were to make washing machines and dishwashers and monitors more repairable, so you could get spare parts and you could get your repair instructions more easily. I think in Ireland, nobody really knows about this. It's never talked about, and there's no impact study as to whether it's had any effect on repair at all. So it's not felt, and there's no pushback, but there's also no celebration of it as an obligation. Of course, there are new eco-design obligations on smartphones now, and we are seeing some pushback against these, but not necessarily from the public, more from companies. And it's a little bit about how it's portrayed in the media. So the media are saying, for example, oh, this company is, can't introduce their new phone because of the regulations in Europe, and Europe is over-regulating. But who is that coming from? I think it's important to question where the pushback is coming from and how it's coming. The last one I wanted to touch on is a positive one, I think, because we don't have it in Ireland, so you can correct me if I'm wrong, but repair vouchers have been very successful as far as we're aware. They started out in one region in Austria. People are given a voucher and they can bring it to a repair shop, and it's a sizable discount on the repair activity. And that's since been rolled out across Austria and some regions in Germany, I think, and is being looked at in other regions as well. The cost of that is to the government, the municipalities, and I was looking at it, it's between 1 million and 20 million euro to the exchequer, depending on the size of the region or if it's the whole country. So people don't really feel that when they're paying their taxes, but they do feel the repair incentive. So that's a really good, I suppose, economic incentive from the public perspective. So what are the lessons from these? So first of all, they have to be designed, whether it's an obligation or an incentive, to be fair and accessible, and you have to think about what are the consequences that maybe are unintended in this, like the deposit return. It sounds like a great idea, but you're punishing good recyclers, so making sure that you're not punishing what is already good behavior is a good starting point. And also, I think how it's communicated and how you bring the media on board to create the right story around why it's a good thing. So why aren't eco-design regulations being promoted as something that will reduce consumption, something that will keep our critical raw materials in circulation for longer because they're designed better? So I think there's a lot to be done in that space.
Thank you. So we already have some ways to optimize the implementation of economic incentives. Now we can hear the perspective of Japan maybe a little bit. Professor Nanagi, Japan has seen relatively little backlash to circularity measures. I know that for the last few years you have implemented some of them, for example, non-financial reporting. But what we can learn actually from your experience, and you have a short presentations.
Yes. Yes. So I'm going to show very briefly. My talk will be saying that we, especially in Japan, obligation first, then incentives. So incentive and obligation both come from the numerical approach. So I'm going to show this is a global trend, and then the Japan's standpoint, same as other Asian country. They try to evaluate how region and company are doing well or bad, but evaluating the value for the societies in terms of natural capital, human capital, and physical capital. So I'm heading the United Nations report for inclusive wealth report. This is the target for beyond GDP. So the Japan start to utilize to evaluate for the local circular economy. So this is a 3 years project, and once we complete next year, we're gonna make all the data programs and the modeling to be available to the public. So in the past 2 years, we are implementing by local, by disclosing the models, and they use our model to evaluate how circular economy can be evaluated. So we see which city are doing good, which company are contributing more or not. So this is an example. For example, we work with NGK insurance companies. So once we pick up one regions, okay, sometimes people's request to the circular economy is this relationship. But in the same axis, if we are reading by the artificial intelligence how each local government try to do it for the next 5 years, the figure looks like this. So you see the figure is different from the left and right. So this shows how people, the citizens want are different from how the local government want for the circular economies. So we see the gap, and we can tell to the locals. So they can say what they're gonna do more. Maybe they shouldn't do too much. And then the company come in. All right, we can provide recycling technology, incinerations, and carbon issues to fill this gap. So this is basically the requirement provided, and we are developing the model for the Ministry of the Economic Industry and Transport for Japan's government. Idea behind that is based on the Beyond the GDP agenda, which has been promoted from the United Nations. So again, I'm heading this report for past 11 years. So it was being circulated in the many media, but this is macro level, okay, country by countries. For circular economy or local side, no one cares. So we try to bring that into the local side. The issue is more important in Asia because more incineration, more waste is coming up, mostly come from Asia. So we take the good evaluation scheme, try to spread to the other countries later times. So this kind of idea of the natural capital inclusive race and well-being has been spread to the UN report a lot. So we do always write to each government and each international organization for that. Often our report has been promoted to the G20 meeting, G8 meeting too. So idea for is, once we are developing some kind of infrastructure for machinery or factory, this is physical capital. So we can count as monetary values. Next is a value for the humans, how healthy they are, reducing air pollutions, and the good educations. Then natural capital. This is a value for the circular environmental issues. Again, monetary values. So this matters because once you are telling to the India, this is the most polluted city in the world. People don't care, politicians. But once we say, all right, the value to the economy matters. We publish to the top medical journals saying instead of this is bad to the environment, we say it matters to the economies. We need more public transport and EV, so that's good for the environment, but also good for the economy. So the government start to care. They have more infrastructure, good for the locals. So valuation matters, and even to the regions, there's no data available. We can provide the estimation using the artificial intelligence, many satellite data, so those are good. Even the satellite, we see where the carbon will be. So we can think about, all right, for rural areas, people don't come, but we can provide a carbon credit, thinking for the circular economy. Suppose sometimes people try to be more accurate, okay? Not just be roughly okay, more accurate. We use better drone radar techniques from the Yamaha, get into the locals, and they don't have people enough. But we can provide better accuracy, mixture with a satellite, telling how many trees are there, and how big is the tree, how much carbon dioxide they can get. So we bring the people for engineering, not the forest science people. Then they can work to produce, all right, we will be getting more reforestation, carbon capture, but then provide the economic activity to there. So this is good for the future value and also the short-term win-win value for the current period. This is because our economy is always going up, but our well-being, this red one, we stay constant because we are always lack with a good value for the natures, good value for the peoples. We misunderstand. We always thinking about the value for the physical capitals. This is bad. So we need to understand our well-being come from the good nature, good peoples. So to understand that, again, AI helps a lot. By using the AI, we have really high accuracy of the prediction how aging matter to the well-being, how income and how good close to the nature matter to the economy. We, in the very long angle, we show the 95 accuracy for how people are thinking, how people get the benefit. So those kind of activity match with the spatial activities. We can show from the 99.9% accuracy for the regional map. We're going to see what will be the future population there. So we're going to provide, this is the right amount of the infrastructure good for the circular economy by evaluating the value for nature, value for the peoples. So we can see the big impact for the infrastructure, but also we can evaluate the company, how they are doing. We published a few months ago from the Asian Development Bank, try to show us not just for the really regional circular economy development limiting to the one city, but supply chain can be connected to globals. Even the one apparel cross, sometimes it matters to the Africa or East Asia. So we can say not just for the economic power, we see human rights is okay, carbon dioxide, air pollution, local economy is okay. So we have our startup company of the ISG, mixture of the AI with ESG. So we help the local government and also the local company to evaluate, as I said, like this. So this will be good to evaluate company purely by AI to show this is my slide, to tell the company that how they are doing good, which they claim is actually good or not. We are telling the local government how much they are promoting is actually making sense or what the next challenge they should be doing. So my standing point here is we can evaluate the local activity a lot well. So this is a recent work that we are doing in Japan and hopefully to the Asian other countries too. Thank you.
What struck me first in the presentation is the gap between policymakers, what they think that people want and the real needs, actually. And this is something that was always there. I mean, the push for GDP growth instead of development. Right. And we have this gap between policymakers and residents. We have this gap between, the sustainability of what people actually want. People mentioned that maybe it wasn't so off. The backlash was against policies, not against sustainability per se. And now I'd like to hear from you on SMEs, on companies, especially yours, like your sustainability. You have a sustainable company, and Mateo, what is your viewpoint from the sustainability-oriented company on circularity obligations? So are they thinking about them, or maybe thinking something positive, pure competitiveness or innovation?
Yeah, thank you and good morning. I went from there. I also found it really further. Okay, sorry. Thank you, Alice. Thank you. The gap between what the policymakers think and what the real needs of people are is something that we look closely from a business perspective when we are promoting products and services that at the end of the day we believe will have a real impact on the environment and a real impact on people. But at the end of the day, I always have to remind myself and my team and the companies we work with some messaging that the sustainable fashion movement has been promoting in the past 10 years, such as buy less, make it last, and choose well, are not what people want to hear when it comes to fashion. It's rather the opposite. People want to have rewards in fashion. When you buy more, you have those reward systems. People want to save money. So choose well for a lot of people translates into I need to spend more money to have something good in my wardrobe, and people don't want to spend more money. Make it last. It's counterproductive when you want to change your wardrobe often to feel sexy every single day and be able to change styles multiple times a day. So this was a huge gap in the sustainable fashion movement in the past 10 years. And I'm part of the problem. I was 10 years ago going around taking the slogan from Vivienne Westwood and saying, this is what we should do. And then what happened 10 years later? People are buying more, CO2 emissions are increasing, circularity is a utopia still, living wages are not there, we have more microplastics, nanoplastics than ever, production is increasing, consumption is increasing. Boom. This really forced us to, at least in our companies, okay, let's take a breath here and let's understand where the tension points are. And one of the things that we've done is, of course, starting to work with policymakers to see how these regulations were being translated into the actual day-to-day operations of the company. And yes, to answer your first question, a lot of these regulations have become a little bit of a burden, especially for small and medium enterprises in Italy, in France, in Germany. I speak, of course, about the textile industry, but you have to imagine a supply chain that is already a lot of stress, a lot of under pressure to survive because the marginalities on the textile supply chain is not the brands. I'm talking about the small, medium enterprises that actually make the clothes are really, really tiny. And all of a sudden, when you have just like a waterfall of certifications, of obligations, and each brand has its own standards, each brand has its own obligations that they're trying to enforce on these companies, the first reaction from the entrepreneurs is, stop. I will not do this. I will go and vote for the other party, as you've said, that doesn't want these obligations to go through. And this is exactly what happened in the past 5 years at the European level, and speaking about Italy at the national level in Italy, where we've really shifted to a right and far right movement. Now, at the end of the day, though, we know that we need to make this buy less, make it last, and choose well a reality. Because the truth is, we are making too much stuff that it's causing a lot of pressure on the planetary boundaries, and we are de facto pushing people into doing things against their own will that is having a lot of positive and negative impact on their well-being, both psychological and physical, and on the well-being of the planet. So where do we go from there? I can give you a few examples, in my opinion, that have worked so far, that I've seen in small and medium adopted by different small and medium enterprises in Italy and worldwide. It's really focusing again on why do we love fashion? Why is it the one industry that produces something really not essential in these quantities, but at the end of the day, that if you look at the top people in terms of wealth in the world, they all sit either in tech or fashion. Makes no sense for the fashion. Well, we love fashion because it satisfies some from an ego perspective, some may call it irrational, some psychological needs. We're asking people, this is with the starting point of the reflection, for the first time in history, to take an apparent step back, to have less in order to be better. Our brain doesn't respond well to this message. So let's trick the brain. From a messaging perspective, from a communication perspective, there are ways to tell people that they're actually gaining more by embracing a more responsible lifestyle in their approach to fashion and clothes. You can say, buy this shirt because it's made out of organic cotton and it reduces the impact on the soil by not using chemical pesticides. And some 15% will have some sort of intellectual hype when I say this. But if I want to speak to 100% of people, I can say, buy the shirt, which is made out of organic cotton, which will make your skin healthier and will actually make you look prettier because you're going to be feel da-da-da-da-da. Link a self-realizing action to positive social environmental impact. I can tell people buy a jeans made out of compost because compostability is important in the jeans industry, or as we've done in Milan, I can take the compost from the denim and use it to grow in the store mint or tomatoes that are then used to make tomato sauce, and mint that was used to make mojitos. And people in Milan love aperitivos, and they were drinking mojitos, and as where they're drinking, the glass said, you're drinking your own jeans. They're like, holy, I can't say a bad word. Jeans can become compost? Yes. So it's just a matter of flipping, I think, the narrative for the market, and the same thing for companies. What do companies really care about? And of course, they want the long-term financial sustainability, but in a world that measures short-term as the primary incentive, you need to help them and support and listen to them by acting, I think, with subsidies and regulations, which I know we're going to talk about later, and ease the fiscal pressure, and helping these companies understand in the long run, if they want their brands to be existent, this is what you need to do now. So it's really the same tactic, whether you're talking to the companies or you're talking to the people, is linking a self-realizing action to positive social environmental impact. Never the opposite, because the opposite feels like a top-down approach that tells you have less in order to be better. And again, our economic system and our brains don't respond well to that, unfortunately. So we can change the economic system. It's harder to change the brain, so you have to trick the brain somehow. And there are ways to do it, nudge it in a way to understand the value that you can have from this.
Thank you. I've noticed that you're, big proponent of mindset change a little bit about, nudging people and thinking that maybe this would be better for them somehow. And I wonder what other panelists think about it. Maybe, prices, differentiating prices on sustainable and unsustainable products might be a better idea there. And Einar, how can we actually implement this? What is better, this mindset change, or maybe some economic incentives in the form of subsidies? But then again, give maybe some examples from Norway. I know that you have a deposit system that is running for 40 years now, right? Claire mentioned that the Irish one is only started. And this is a long question, but the last one.
That's a long question.
Yeah, how can regulators rebuild the social trust that they lost actually by implementing these obligations they put on us, on SMEs, as you said, the bargain that actually, pushed us from sustainability in some way?
It's several questions.
Choose one.
Well, every one of them. It was really interesting what you said about the user behavior and how you kind of incentivize the consumers by the value proposition. Very, very interesting. Also, with your pump, as you said, it's working very well now, but it's been established as part of the culture for a long, long time. So Tumba, which is the kind of lead supplier of the machines that is repurposing or kind of collecting the bottles, is very established. So it's a part of the daily life. Of course, there's an economic incentive in that. You go to the shop, you get a little bit of money, and you can buy more goods. So we help each other as well. But this trust issue, what is interesting in Norway is social democracy in the north has a high level of regulation, which is kind of culturally adapted for a long time. So it's, for instance, the trust issue. In Norway, we have the transparency, institutionalized Transparency Act, and one of the key factors on trust in the textile industry is the stories of the sweatshops and how it affects the production countries. So in 2022 we got regulated in the Transparency Act, where you as a consumer can at any time demand ethical reporting on any value chain, any company, and any product in Norway. And they need to deliver an answer within 3 months that is audited. And I think that's maybe one of the first legislative acts where you actually bridge out of your country's value chain, your country's market, in reporting on a sustainability principle. Unfortunately, this is not still used for natural impact or environmental impact, but it's ethical. So it's a start. It begins with the humans, right? And it's a very interesting factor, and the trust issue is very apparent there, because transparency automatically kind of keeps trust. So that's a very good example of how legislation can enhance trust. Another thing is predictability. We have the highest EV rating in the world. The incentives for buying electric vehicles in Norway is very strong. So you have a lack of VAT, you have lack of taxation. EV cars are much cheaper than fossil fuel cars. And now we have a result over the last 20 years. I think it's 90% new cars are bought is electric vehicles. The incentive on is not only price, but it's also convenience. So the EV cars are allowed to drive in the bus lane to get this into this daily life for people, right? But then you have predictability. So it was very clear from the get-go in the 90s, or when we started, that the convenience of being able to drive in the bus lane will be pulled back when the EV cars are too many, because then you of course block the collective transport system. So right now, I think next year we're pulling back that law. But again, it was just the government being very able to say, well, this is a temporary incentive to increase the EV structure, but given the predictability, it is not being kind of criticized that it's being pulled back. A third example is also where you combine regulatory, mandatory perspectives and incentives, is that you applied a very high cost on delivering business waste or waste from industries. Ridiculously high cost, but if you fragment it and sort it and deliver it in pure categories, you have a very, very low cost. So actually you kind of double the effect by putting on a very heavy regulatory cost, and then you give the incentives for the sustainable behavior. So it's quite interesting to see how that, but all the time it's all about kind of being predictable on the legislatory approach, and also of course with transparency and institutionalized structure in Norway, you actually apply the test.
Thanks for these examples. I've noticed that you mentioned infrastructure. Professor Manelli also underlined the importance of this infrastructure as an economic incentives. Earlier we talked about extended producer responsibility and from deposit schemes. So we have all these measures that are probably not used to the extent that they should be used. So how can we, scale it up, and how can we avoid the backlash that we have seen from this huge obligations that, for example, in Europe, maybe in the US, were put on citizens, on SMEs, etc. Any one of you can answer if you want to.
good. For example, in the past, we do not make the value for the circularity, nature, or even the value of the health. So people doesn't acknowledge these are important. People say this is important, but once it's become the economic measure, we see the big value for the huge plant, facility, or even the building like this. But once we have a measurement, people can directly compare the effort toward the carbon dioxide, effort toward the circular economy. These matters a lot. So, yeah. So as long as measurement is there, people acknowledge, okay, even though there's a political backlash, people all the new investment move on. So those is a good starting point for the local region, also the company too.
Any other ideas for avoiding the pitfalls that we have seen with obligations?
I think it's about the design of the obligation and knowing what's already in your local ecosystem. So, you know, in our case, as you said, Einar, I'll come back to the deposit return scheme, but we already had a recycling system in place for those things that was very convenient, and then introduced something that wasn't convenient. So that's the change. And maybe for SMEs too, introducing obligations on small companies with small margins is going to have an impact, whereas maybe there's other ways to approach that. So it's definitely, as for so many things, it starts the design phase.
Okay, and probably knowing your consumer, knowing your residents, as Professor Managi mentioned in his presentation. Okay, so at the end, I would like to, to give me just a 1 minute answer on a simple question. What type of economic incentive will be the first step forward for advancing circularity if you would be the policymaker? Will you go with maybe taxation, maybe infrastructure, or is it extended producer responsibility? Just short answer with a small, description.
Yeah, one answer from each of us. In Norway, the big debate now is removal of VAT of anything that has been used to decrease the cost of used goods, so you can increase the transactions of secondary materials and goods.
I think in textiles, one measure that's working really well, in France, for example, you get a bonus, a voucher, whenever you want to repair your clothing item instead of buying a new one. It's working well, I think, because it gives that incentive, but then how do you avoid having people actually then continuing to buy more and just getting on this voucher? So I think it's a great step forward, not yet perfect. What's lacking right now in the textile industry in Europe is the actual infrastructure to make circularity even possible, because it's very hard to recycle, and most of the times when you recycle textiles, you don't really uplift and create better fibers. You create lower quality fibers because you shorten them, and the fabric as a result come out as lower in durability and lower in the hand and feel.
But still, these are other problems. But you go with the tax system.
I think the EPR system and tax system is a great start on at least on the brands to make them reflect that overproduction and overconsumption is not the way forward, and at the same time provide the incentive of the people to extend the pleasure of use of what they have in their wardrobe, and at the interim continuing to work to create better infrastructure.
First information, then the price, and finally the tax. So we work with one apparel small medium companies. We provide the supply chain sustainability impact, and over the 8 past weeks, they become the #1 sales for making the apparel to be more circular. So they get 1% of the customer. They don't need 80% of the customer to catch it. So small start is good. Then they got the prize for the Prime Minister Award. So people get more attention over the time. Then good. Then finally the tax. So initially they realize, okay,
I think we need to look at the system as a whole, the economic system as a whole. So I don't want to see tweaks around the edges, so bits of tax here and there. I think we need to see what are we subsidizing, because sometimes we reduce tax for one thing, but we're still subsidizing the linear economy. So it's competing against that anyway. So we need to look at the whole picture and see what do we need to stop subsidizing or change how we support those industries or those activities, and how do we make sure that the circular approach is supported more. And that's both economic and regulatory perspective. It's a big study there.
Thank you very much. A big round of applause for our panelists. Yeah, we've heard. We've heard a lot on economic incentives, on how to fight the social backlash that we've encountered earlier. And now we move on to the second panel during this session that will be moderated by my colleague, Agnieszka Schneck. And it is called Advantages on Unsustainable Behavior, the Role of Taxation and Economic Subsidies. So how to tackle those unsustainable ways our economic system is subsidizing unsustainable actions.
Thank you very much. My name is Agnieszka Schneck. I'm representing Innovo as well. Maybe just one comment about this repairing voucher, which comes on my mind. It's very good, I like it, but it depends who is paying for that. Because if it goes from our taxes, we are a little bit taking off responsibility from producers. And I think this is not good, because they still can produce like cheap stuff, and we still paying for that. So I think this extended producer responsibility it's a key in my opinion. But let's go to the panel about the carrot, sticks, regulation, subsidies. And firstly, I introduce our distinguished expert. I would like to welcome Anders Lagerfeldt, member of European Economic and Social Committee, representing the Confederation of Danish Industry. Good morning, good afternoon. We have Professor Koyu Furusawa, Chief Executive of the Japan Center for Sustainable Environment and Society, an NGO which dedicated to achieving sustainable development and social justice in the society. And Professor Bolesław Rok, Professor of Sustainability Management in Koźmiński University in Poland, and also he is leading the Department of Entrepreneurship and Business Ethics. But let's start maybe with Professor Furusawa, because I know that you had short presentation regarding our topic, so maybe let's start with this introductory presentation and discuss further.
Good morning, good afternoon, or the world. Okay, this session is very important for these 3 days. Just I want to talk about this how to regulate or political strategy we need. So I just mentioned about. So already mentioned about the strategic approach for sustainability. This is very focused on, this session is more about economic method of control, taxation, incentive or disincentive. But I think it's very important for macro level and more international level. One is technological innovation. This session, 3 days, it's about kind of technological control and also the high environmental management. The very basic LCA, life cycle assessment, and also related with legal regulations. And it is very important for the control, but very strict. So more softly incentive is economical incentive and the disincentive. So there are many new trend is finance and investment is very base of our economy. So one thing is our NGO, we NGO connect together to this is promoting fair finance movement. This is started in Europe, but now in Japan and also in Asia. The fair finance movement is just no code, no green, and this is very basic. And there are no this kind of disincentives. So how to connect is not only economic but also policy and technology. Just back again. And this is more important to incentive more for investment. I just mentioned about the fair finance. Fair finance. This is, and there are kind of monitoring the insurance company and also banking company. We are now check their policy and to scoring how to contribute to sustainability. So scoring compare with basically European level, but in Japan very not so good, and also in Asia, the very international standard to promote the sustainability. This kind of monitoring. Just before the mention, Professor Manabe mentioned about measuring. Measuring is very important to incentive. And also, more basic position is the social or adaptation or cultural adaptation. This is very important for our lifestyle and also daily life. And very related with education or ethics or cultural behavior. And this is one of the most important in Japan, also very important. Just one campaign I introduced my organization, this diet for the earth or diet for the planet. This concept is related with health is in individual condition, but also health is very important for our planet. So there are some measuring daily life, food, transportation, and some other materials to check, and you can easily measuring the cost, and we can discount our daily life cost, but also discount for big damage for the environment and also to gas planet. This is a kind of educational kit we provide, and also for the education. Just nowadays, we are now Japanese government Ministry of Education and just introduced SDGs. SDGs is a very big target in our planet, all over the world, and Japan is very promoting SDGs activities. And recently, Japan introduced fixed book standard, introduced SDGs from primary education and middle education and high school education. They are very related with not only science or history or let's say household, home economics division. Those are very related with. This is very just beginning, and our Japanese younger generation, they are now almost knows SDGs. So we have to this is our talent, and this is very beginning in Japan, but also they are related with company or business very concerned about SDGs ranking. So just now we are environmental measuring sustainability. There are many approaches, but the very big or total perspective related with SDGs. So we are combining for both circular economy and also bioeconomy or biological diversity, and also nature positive, and also our health positive way of thinking, and also the activities. So just I introduce. Just I finished. Probably the time is limited. How to relate with interconnections with those political strategies, and from personal production level, material level, but also enterprise business level, and also this is the regional, local to local, and international level. Probably this afternoon session more focus on this bottom approaches, but today this session is very enterprise and business level is very important based activities. So thank you very much.
So Anders, you are representing one of the European institutions, and in Europe we have a lot of regulation, like for example taxonomy, which is supposed to support the sustainable project, sustainable innovation, let's say. But still, there is a lot of subsidies which support non-sustainable projects. I'm from Poland, so we can feel, I think, the most, which is the fossil fuels are number one, and there is a lot of money goes to subsidize it. Why is that?
Well, it's a good question. It's almost a bit philosophical, you can say. I mean, obviously, when we look at, for instance, the question about subsidizing, let's say, the linear economy through subsidizing fossil fuel, that is a topic that we at the EESC have taken up in several opinions, and also provided, let's say, input to the European Commission and the European policymakers to tell them that this is a very bad idea. But, you know, bad habits, they are difficult to change. And if you look at it historically, obviously, all these subsidies were not introduced in a context of what is good or bad for the environment. They were introduced, I mean, why do you subsidize fossil fuels? You do because you want to create growth, or you don't want to hinder growth, so you reduce the price. You do it to create jobs. It's other considerations than environment. And of course, those things are very difficult to change. I mean, you don't change them overnight, and especially also not at EU level, because tax policy is really a national competence. So there is limited, pressure that the EU can put on this. So we need to look at alternatives. In a way, I think we need to turn the coin around and say, all this money, and I believe that in 2023, fossil fuel subsidies in the EU alone amounted to more than 100 billion euros. So we need to turn the coin around and say, how can we instead use this money to bring about a development that we really want? And of course, doing that requires that there is an agreement of what the development we want. And there, coming back to your questions, I think there is, let's say, different trends at the same time that don't go well together. There is definitely at European level, also from the European Commission, also when you listen to the Commission President's recent speech in the Parliament, the support for the green transition, for the circular economy is an important tool and part of it. So the narrative is still there, but of course we have a backlog of old habits, as I say, and they don't fit with the other narrative, and we have to accept that it will take time. It's simply a matter of patience. So I think what we should do is try to, from this community, for instance, in the circular economy community, to really show how much more value we as Europeans could get out of those 100 billions of euros if we invested them in targeted initiatives, things that would help promote renewable energy, circular economy, and I mean there is a long list of things. I mean it's not that we don't know or that the Commission doesn't know what there are. We saw in another event recently, I think the day before yesterday, an overview of all the initiatives in the Green Deal, and it is really impressive. So it's not that we don't know where we might need some more money to do something better and more targeted. And I think that the targeted is really the point, because if you look at, for instance, again, the fossil fuel subsidies, that is an extremely general, where you spread out in a large amount of taxpayers' money for something that is not efficient in any way. It simply slows the transition that we need. It in a way puts a brake on the development that we all want. If we could take that and put into something that is very targeted. And targeted is not only research or programs for this or that initiative. Sorry. Thank you. It's also, and this is important also from the European Economic and Social Committee, that of course we cannot say that the cost of fossil fuel is not important for let's say policymakers and the electorate, because I mean energy costs are high and some people can't afford to pay their bills and so on. But then what we should do is target help and subsidies to them rather than spreading it out more generally. That would not be so expensive.
Thank you very much.
This microphone.
Yeah, I think that's which one with this. So Bolesław, now hand over to you. Economic incentive, disincentive can take many forms. Yeah, we have carrots, we have sticks. So in your opinion, which one should be prioritized? Carrot, stick, or maybe sequencing of both?
You know, it really depends. Yeah, I think. Which one? Does it work or?
Yeah, so maybe I will try this. Yeah, it really depends, but of course, my opinion at least that, you know, which all incentives could work when they are aligned with systemic change. Yeah, if there is no systemic change, if we are just subsidizing, you know, ethical fashion startups, and at the same time we are just letting all those two great Chinese apps which are operating all over Europe and not only Europe, you know, and it's and we are doing nothing except France, which starting, you know, to do something against that. Then, you know, all kinds of incentives for circular fashion startups doesn't work. And the same is with, you know, subsidizing coal mining, like in Poland, you know, we are spending for the last 20 years already, you know, every year we are spending something like around direct subsidy, 3 billion euro. So it's really a lot. If we can imagine that we are redirect those money, and we are waiting, you know, for financial incentives, yeah, like Professor Furusawa said about sustainable finance. and all those incentives for finance industry, that we have, different new financial products like sustainability-linked loans or green bonds, and a lot of them. And the market is really huge now. Yeah, it's really billions of euro for this green finance or sustainable finance. And of course, the intention was that it will be a kind of incentive in a way for innovative companies. But it doesn't work like that. When you see, the main receivers of all these sustainability-linked loans are just, the same fossil fuel industry. So it's really a problem. So I think that at least, we have to think carrots for more innovative ideas. And sticks for rather, to keep the fairness of the market. If we have, the laggards and the front runners, the front runners are doing much more, and then if we are putting more, restriction or disincentives for laggards, then, we can clear the market, we can make it more fair. And I think it can work then in this sense. But of course, for big companies, I think that it doesn't matter if they have incentives or disincentives, carrots or sticks. And I'm using the term which is in English probably should be stick carrot. Stick carrot, which means that it's just the same, For big companies, they're just, box ticking, and it's more about compliance, yeah? It's, if you have, some regulations that you have, to put in place, some, I don't know, some circular stuff, yeah, then you can do it. If you are penalized for doing something, then you can stop doing it. But in fact, it's like with reporting, I think. We had this great sustainability reporting, idea at the European level. In the beginning, there was a lot of promise, that ESG will be just, the real change maker in the market. And then we had Omnibus, because of all these populist movements, like it was, said before, and now, big companies are just, putting some numbers, some indicators without real transition. So it's for nothing. Yeah, it means that it's failed in a way. And of course, the idea was, yes, we can regulate. Yeah, we can mobilize the whole industry to have the same playing field. Yeah, but it's not possible. So I think that in fact, if we have a lot of discussions, like Claire was talking about this Irish deposit system for bottles, we will have it. We will start in Poland in 1 week. This system, and we have already a lot of discussions, and all the actors on this are disappointed at this stage here, and the policy, it's it's still they are fighting with each other. And for example, we have also all this sorting system for used textile, yeah, and it's the same. People don't know what to do with them, and I think that this change, this mindset change, which is necessary from just putting to the mixed waste, and now you have to bring it somewhere, but nobody knows where, what to do with them after, because textile to textile is just a good idea for some startups, but it's not scaled enough. Yeah, so we are just wasting anyway. Yeah. So I think that in fact all those incentives and disincentives, they are not working well, and it's just a simple thesis. But I strongly believe that it's rather competitiveness. Rather, I'm a management professor, so I strongly believe in the managerial skills, and they know what to do. because of competition, because of the market expectations, because of sustainable mindset, which is just on the race, but it's different paths in different sectors on different scale. So the managers know better what to do. And all those regulations, it's not only for small, medium-sized companies, also for big companies. No, we don't want anymore.
Thank you very much. In my opinion, so far, I don't see much incentive. I like this VAT thing. I think it's very simple, and it can help a lot, because still these primary resources are cheaper than secondary, so it doesn't work. And also, it's good that you mentioned this non-financial reporting, yes, the CSRD directive, but at some point, the most of money just goes for producing the beautifully, nicely printed reports, not for the real change per se, which was not the point. So I think the regulation sometimes, maybe it's not the best idea, but how is in Japan then? What do you prefer, regulation or carrots?
Yeah, I think the regulation or taxation in Japan is very difficult. Most people reject the taxation. This is the reality. But I think, I remember in Germany, they produce carbon tax. This is not only the tax, but also related with social welfare for business. So this, I think the incentive or negative aspect is how to change the more positive aspect. For example, I just talk about the last slide. This is important for the health, not only individual but also the environmental climate. And the keyword is, I think, already mentioned that Madam Professor has mentioned, well-being. Well-being, it means not only our individual well-beings, but also social well-beings, and also international or planetary well-being, planetary health. So how to link with from negative image to more positive image. This is very important to accept that kind of taxation or regulation. So this is the keyword is a kind of nexus. The very famous Harari book, famous bestseller book. They are related with digital, social, human development. But in our history, the basic our evolutionary historical progress related with nexus and relationship, and how to harmonize with interrelationship. And so our sustainability vision is the circular economy or bioeconomy is very essential, but those are the middle of the concept. More higher level of the concept is a kind of social, not only social, cultural also, the well-being. And I think beyond SDGs activities, they are now shifting for not negative aspect, but also more positive aspect. This is probably the well-being concept. This is related with not only climate change issues, but also more about the biodiversity. The biodiversity is now basic is nature positive. Very big possibility our nature activities or nature circulation. We are now depend on this system, but very progress and industry. But now we are now going to shift more biological or ecological networking with our industry. So our perspective is taxation is very important and regulation important, but this is not only negative aspect but also more positive aspect related to our our social welfare or cultural welfare, the well-being is, I think, this is a very important concept to promote the incentive in regulation.
So as we just have last 10 minutes, so maybe just to summarize, so as we see these fossil fuel subsidies are everywhere. So do you see the potential for, or can you imagine the potential for such similar incentive action, incentive cooperation among different countries, between different nature, and what could we gain from that? Like coordinated, harmonized incentive program for whole world, let's say, yes? Can you imagine something like this and how it could be implemented? Is it possible?
Well, I think we have to look at it as two tracks. There is the slow track, which is slowly, over time, moving in the right direction, more and more international cooperation. Sometimes there are downturns, sometimes there's pushback. Right now we have, at least in Europe and many other areas of the world, a pushback from certain actors, parties, call them what you want, you know who I'm talking about. And we just need to see that, well, that's a downturn, and we need to push and still get it up again. But it will take a long time before it delivers. Maybe we don't have time, to wait for that only. And that's why we also need to look at the other track. And I think that track is maybe not so much, well, it is also based on regulation and policy initiatives. And I think we should take, for instance, the European Commission on their word and say, okay, they look for input for how we can improve sustainability, environmental protection, circular economy. We will give it, we will provide it. We have the ideas to how this could be done. We should show it also and not just tell it. And that's, in a way, also part of that track, that maybe we should also just think, if we can, financially, in terms of being first movers. It could be countries. Sorry for referring to my own country, but in Denmark there's actually a very, very low level of subsidies for fossil fuels. Denmark is part of the international coalition to bring it down. It's one of the lowest part of GDP. I think we only give a lot of money to biomass, but it's something like that. So we cannot wait for everybody to agree to do the same. Sometimes we just need to move ahead. And the same goes for the business sector and all the circular economy community that is here. We need to show let's say, we need to stay optimistic. We need to develop a business model or a concept or an initiative that shows, wow, this works. And then we also, I think, if we do that and also try to be smart in getting investment into the right initiatives, maybe more into the substance of developing new technology and new business models rather than all the paperwork and so on. But I think it is also important that we simply keep showing this, and we will do it collectively in a way, and that is also at least what the European Circular Economy Stakeholder Platform is about. It is connecting the dots between all the stakeholders who can make this happen and who will be successful in making it happen, whether there is political backing for it or not. And I think there's an interesting point about this question. I think we should not also be too scared about the political backlash, because, sorry, a lot of this comes from populists who don't have an opinion about anything. They just try to say what they think people think. And what you said, Claire, we need, if we can find out what people really think, and maybe they are more progressive than the politicians who claim to represent them, we as a circular community, we as circular business, should go into an alliance with the normal citizens if we use the right arguments that you also talked about, and then hope that this whole populist backlash that hampers the policy will go away soon. That would be my take. So both tracks are important.
Thank you very much. 3 minutes. Because
Yes, so I think that we still are convinced that economic incentives are technical instruments. But it's, in fact, it was Alice yesterday who reminded us that we are not irrational human beings, and also organizations are not fully rational, because they are people-led. Yes, so it means that we have to think about emotions, about social norms, about this choice architecture. Like, if you are starting a catering service, it should be vegan by default. Yeah, and then if you would like to have something additional, then you can ask for. But so we have to think about this choice architecture, and I think it's a systemic change. It's possible. So incentives are not technical. Are really, they have to apply to our mindsets at the company level, individual level. I think what is important here, also mentioned before, this gap between expectations from community and policy. And I think the same is at every level. Yeah. So we have to think also that it's sustainability is a global commitment. So we have to think also about incentives which can work on a global scale. It's not enough that we will, put some, mechanism inside European Union. But of course, we have to look at all those instruments like carbon adjustment mechanism and all those issues which are cross globe. And it is important to combine that and then to think about, our change. And of course, if European Commission is using now this term sustainable competitiveness, and I think that it's really important to understand what does it mean. Sustainability in terms of economic competitiveness. It's not only economic, it's much more. So we are just at the beginning, I think, and we have no time.
Thank you very much. Of course, we can't forget about public procurement, but it's maybe not the topic of today's session, but it could be very powerful tool, I think. I don't know, Professor, would you like to add some final words to the discussion?
Yes, the important keyword is one was competitiveness for sustainability, but also it's very important for our cooperation. So sustainability and cooperation, how to combine together synergically. And now in Japan, it's promoting the local to local. This is a kind of competitiveness, also it's a cooperation. So this is very spreading each other, and now it's spreading or not only national level but also international Asian level. Asian level is a city-to-city cooperation. Just the Yokohama City just promoting this kind of city net and promotion or sustainability of the cooperation. So local to local and local to global, city to city, these are the one of the competition, but also the cooperation that is very important for positive aspect. Thank you.
Just one sentence here. I think we have also to think about the impact on those incentives, not only on companies, on economy, but also on households. Yeah, because in some segments, in some sectors, it's really important because it's indirect impact, but it's really important.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you very much. But it seems like incentives are a little bit could work better than regulation. I think what Matteo said, that we have to show this bright side of of our actions. But Hubert, would you like to, I don't know, say the final words? And thank you very much. And I think we are about to close.
Remarks. Hope that each and every one of you noticed that we are big proponents of economic incentives that we encourage you to push for them in your own country. And so let's hope for the future will be better without so many regulation, but with more economic incentives. Thank you very much.